Welcome back. State capture whistleblower and newly appointed Wits University Governance School Director Themba Maseko says the unauthorized attempted entry into his home on Friday morning seems to suggest that it was linked to the release of the first volume of a report by the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture. But was this an intimidation tactic or simply a coincidental criminal act? Well, Themba Maseko joins us now via Zoom. Mr. Maseko, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to The Full View.
Good afternoon and good evening to you and to your listeners.
Now, you say that you were at a very secure part of the property surrounded by so many houses and that there was no sign of any forced entry. What are the elements that convinced you that this was indeed an intimidation tactic?
Well, I think the timing, firstly, of the incident makes us suspicious. Secondly, there was no attempted break into the house in terms of the other rooms that would have been easily accessible from a criminal point of view. The criminal seems to have come in, jumped into the roof, and focused on top of our bedroom, and that's when we heard the footsteps of the people were on top of our roofs. And video evidence is actually confirming that indeed at around 3:15, somebody did get into the property and made their way to the roof of our bedroom.
Did you see these intruders? I mean, are you of the view that an attempt was made on your life, or it was simply a ploy to take whatever they wanted to take?
Well, at this stage, I mean, there's no evidence because the people have not been caught. But what is very clear is that we clearly see somebody sneaking into the yard, avoiding the cameras, the CCTV cameras. We don't see them climbing into the roof. We then hear footsteps in our roof. I wake up. When I look through the bathroom window, I do see the intruder on top of our roof, and that's when I shouted and called for help, and we actually pressed the panic button. And what's even very clear is that even after we've shouted for help and pressed the panic button, the person still spent a few minutes onto our roof. It's only when the neighborhood security guys actually started moving into the property, that the person is seen running away from the building of the house into the darkness, and they disappear after that.
Mr. Maseko, it's absolutely bizarre that you say that there was no forced entry into your home, but you saw, well, as per the CCTV video footage, you saw the intruder making entry or gaining entry into your home. Would you attribute this perhaps to the laxity of security on the property?
Well, there is a bit of security. The house is surrounded by about 7 houses. It's a panhandle of sorts. Secondly, we've got an electric fence which should have been triggered by somebody jumping over the fence, which demonstrates that, in fact, this appears to have been well organized. And the person walks past the place where I have an office, and on the table, I've got my computer. My wife's iPad was right on the table. They just walked past. No attempt to get into that room and access those assets. They just went straight into our room. This is what makes us a bit suspicious. They went straight into the roof of my bedroom where I was sleeping with my wife, and I then was woken up by the noises, peeped through the bathroom window and saw this intruder a few meters from my window, and I shouted for help, and that's when we pressed the panic button. So the sense one gets from this scenario is that there was no intention to intrude or to steal, but it was something it made us believe that it was an attempt to intimidate me and my wife as a result of what might be happening in the country.
Now, Mr. Maseko, the Whistleblowers for Change group, which includes those who testified at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into state capture and the others, says the law needs to do more to protect whistleblowers. So what kind of support and protection do the whistleblowers need?
Without any shade of a doubt, security is going to become very important for all the whistleblowers, because the Zondo Commission report is out. Chances are that charges will be laid against all of those who are implicated in state capture. So whistleblowers may be expected to testify in front of a judge or a magistrate when the cases are presented. So security for whistleblowers is going to become more urgent as we get closer and closer towards the release of the final report, and at the time when charges are presented in court against all of those who participated and facilitated state capture. So security, number one priority. But I know a lot of whistleblowers are without employment as we speak. They are running into serious financial difficulties because of lack of support. So that's going to be a second element. A third element will obviously be psychosocial support, because a lot of the whistleblowers have also experienced some, kind of depression because of the pressures that they've experienced. So those are things that I think government needs to look at as a matter of absolute priority.
Well, you seem to be supporting calls for physical security to be provided to whistleblowers and their families, and that whistleblowing should be made a national strategic priority. You also mentioned psychosocial support. What about financial support in terms of relocating some of these whistleblowers?
Well, I think financial support, yes, is maybe important, because some of the whistleblowers have lost their livelihoods. Some have lost their houses. They've got kids who need to go to school. There's no financial support. Some have lost their houses, the risk of losing their homes. So some kind of financial support, I think, is becoming absolutely urgent. So it's security, it's financial support, it's psychosocial support in terms of counseling for those who may be going through serious periods of depression as we speak. So I think it's something that requires some urgent attention, yes, from government, from the NGO sector, but even from the private sector, to make sure that when these cases are presented in front of a court, we still have whistleblowers who may be willing to testify and become witnesses in court cases that may be coming through.
Does South Africa's justice system enable an environment that will, sort of create a culture that makes it easier to disclose information about criminal or other irregular conduct?
At this stage, no. We have what we call a Public Disclosure Act, which is, I think, an insufficient piece of law that needs to be reviewed as a matter of urgency, because it's very clear that whistleblowers do not enjoy any form of legal, financial, and security protection in the current legal framework. So that is why the group of whistleblowers who have come together with some supporters from the public are saying there needs to be an urgent review of the existing legislative framework to make sure that whistleblowers can indeed be supported in whatever form is required, to make sure that the fight against corruption gains momentum. But in this current phase, there isn't sufficient support for whistleblowers, I say.
All right, Mr. Themba Maseko, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
That is Themba Maseko, state capture whistleblower and newly appointed director of the Executive Development Unit at the University of the Witwatersrand School of Governance.